Please welcome our next speaker, Quinn Nakayama, Senior Director, Grid Research, Innovation, and Development for PG&E.
All right. Well, welcome, and thank you for coming to our Innovation Summit. I don't know how I follow up something like that from Jason, but I really appreciate you all being here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about why exactly we created the R&D strategy and this Innovation Summit and where we intend to go from here. So, last month we published our R&D strategy report. And the reason why we did this is, if you're familiar with how you do R&D within the utility sector, you can understand a little bit of the frustration. You know, how does this kind of work is, you have a technology or some sort of new gadget out there, you go up to some VP or some director at the utility, or maybe we meet you at Distributech and we have a good meeting, and then we buy one, and we pilot it, and then it sits there. And it's not to say that it wasn't a great idea or a great technology, but sometimes we struggle with whether it's important enough for us to drive our entire utility culture into that particular product. It is one thing to take one widget and test it and prove it out. It is a whole nother ball of wax to get something like that to scale. And through the PG&E and other IOUs investments planning processes, through our GRC, it becomes a real struggle to try to figure out how to get from one to many. In order to figure out how to do that, we wanted to make sure that we weren't just creating solutions in search for a problem. We wanted it to take it from the other side and say, how do we create problem statements that will enable you as technologists, you as innovators, you as research institutes to be able to understand where do we need help, as Jason so eloquently stated. And so we created a 143-page, about 70 problem statements to be able to help really expose where are the areas that we need the most help. And we tied it to the true north. And this was critical. We had to have a true north strategy before we can land an R&D strategy on top of. And it really is focused on the energy systems initiatives. And today, we'll be going through how exactly that actually works from a thematic perspective. You're going to hear much more about this through the breakout sessions today. We worked with countless people in each one of these areas and said, what keeps you up at night? What are some of the problem statements that you are looking to make sure that you can either meet your targets in 10 years or even accelerate, lean forward and accelerate into it? And working with countless subject matter experts that you're going to meet in these breakout sessions, we were able to put together these problem statements for you to take a look at. Now, how do you get 70 problem statements to make sense? Is you bubble them up into themes and you find thematic values. And that creates for a little bit more easier reading, and we were able to put that directly into the report. So let's go through this a little bit. The gas system has the most problem statements in our entire report. And the reason why is that we know from electrification, throughput is diminishing on our gas system. As we move from gas stoves to electric stoves to gas heaters to heat pumps, these are areas where we need to make sure that as throughput decreases, we have to figure out ways to still keep rates affordable for our customers while maintaining or increasing reliability of our gas system. And we have had new rules being placed with our cooperation in Southern California Gas and all the gas industry to create a safer system. We just have to figure out how to do this in the most efficient way possible. And that's theme one. Theme two, we know that methane emits from the gas system. How do we make sure that we can minimize the amount of methane that gets emitted from our gas system? And theme three, how do we decarbonize that system? RNG, hydrogen, very popular topics that are happening around the circuit right now. How do we do that, blend it, while creating safety and integrity of our system at the first and foremost? For electric vehicle strategy, 70% load growth on all of electrification, the majority of that happening in electric vehicles. In order to make sure that we maintain rates lower than the cost of gas, we need to make sure that we can actually avoid doing upgrades on our system and making it so that we can maximize the utilization of our entire system, while thinking about the customer and how do we accelerate your journey to get an EV and a level 2 charger at your home, to accelerate our ability to get EVSEs and high-speed fast chargers onto our network so they don't have to wait 3 to 5 years to get their full access that they need to our grid and the demand that they require. We also want to unlock the potential for EVs as a grid asset. We're not talking about just a 13.5 kilowatt hour energy storage that you might have on the side of the house. We're talking about a 200 plus kilowatt hour power plant that can provide both demand flexibility and energy into our actual system. And there is a world of potential when we talk about how we might be able to unlock that. For integrated grid planning, we need to figure out how to take our grid that we have today and be able to get more out of it. The gods of physics will dictate that thermal rating on your system is going to prevent you from being able to push more energy through. Yet we may be able to have technologies that help us through that thermal rating constraint. And we need to be able to optimize. You're going to hear this over and over. How do we optimize where our investments are taking place and create resource flexibility so that we don't have to do all those investments on our grid? Supply and load management. We know that the duck curve is something that we've been able to help mitigate through putting a significant amount of energy storage onto our system. But we know that load management is going to be a critical component for being able to ensure that we're not overbuilding our system. And we know that load management is going to be huge. And if we think about where DERs are going to be, DERs equals EVs starts to change the dynamics of some of that conversation on load flexibility and our ability to make differences on both supply all the way down to distribution. And finally, we need to develop new clean energy solutions, right? We have lithium ion. Now we need to get into areas of long duration storage. Now we need to get into seasonal storage. And now we need to get into new, cleaner, renewable base load that we can put onto the system. And that's going to require ingenuity in how we think about energy supply. And on wildfire, I mean, this is something that we've been innovating and putting research and development dollars in for quite some time. Some of this is not going to be new to many of us, but we need to make sure that we can monitor and inspect our assets without just the annual inspection eyes on site, between cycles, degradation, being able to identify degradation as it occurs on the system. We've been able to do great things on PSPS and EPSS, which are two acronyms, Public Safety Power Shutoff and Enhanced Protection Safety Settings, to be able to make sure that ignitions don't occur on our system. It's not perfect, and we have a ways to go to be able to help that and minimize the customer impacts from when those outages occur so that those ignitions don't occur, but those outages, as Patty eloquently says in so many staff meetings, about make this invisible to our customers. And we need innovation and technology to do just that. Vegetation management, right? Pacific Gas, Electric, and Vegetation Company, I know it's kind of a running joke, but how do we optimize how we take vegetation out so that we're minimizing the amount of vegetation that we need to clear for both our customers as well as for the environment? And then finally, the forest. This is a unique one. And the reason why it's unique is a utility's role in the forest management. Our assets coexist with the forest, and we need to figure out a way to make sure that we can manage the forest with our partners, because it's a critical portion of our general ecosystem. And we have to figure out a way to coexist with that as a utility that has overhead assets within those areas. On undergrounding, this is a big commitment to underground 10,000 miles by PG&E that actually can make economic sense based upon, if you think about all the work that we need to do on the overhead system that no longer needs to be done on an underground system. If we can figure out ways to lower our cost per line mile on that system. And that's going to require a lot of innovation, trenching, soil management. And you're going to hear more about that in that breakout session, about how do we lower ourselves down to the minimum amount of cost per line mile that we can do on the undergrounding. And finally, on service drops, this is one of the most painful portions of the undergrounding, is that very, very last segment between the customer's home and our assets. And how do we do this in a way that minimizes customer disruption and minimizes customer pain of doing a panel conversion from an overhead configuration to an underground? We need help here to be able to minimize that risk. All right, conclusion. You know, I had these talking points that I had drafted yesterday about how I would talk about what I thought about why we're doing this. And against my better judgment, and with some coaching from my coworkers, instead of telling you what I think needs to be done, maybe it might be better to tell you how I feel. I am one person in a 30,000 person company. We are 30,000 people in a 40 million person state, in a 300 million person nation, in an 8 billion person world. It is the definition of arrogance to think that we 30,000 can make and change and save the world. I get it. I get it. And yet, I left my home this morning with my 8-year-old son and my 4-year-old daughter and said goodbye. And I can't get this thought out of my mind that says changing the world and saving the world is arrogance. We better goddamn try. And I think And here's the thing. I want us to align on that. No. Alignment means that we're just all pointing in the same direction. It is resonance that creates the key for us. And the R&D strategy report and our desire to put to this innovation summit is about resonance. For those of you who have studied music like I have, you know that you don't go to a concert to get aligned. You go to a concert to have that resonance. And the beautiful thing about a concert is that there are different sections of a symphony. You got the winds, you got the brass, you got the percussions, and you got, let me see, what am I missing here? Strings. Each one has a different sound. Even within a particular section, we have the violin, the violas, the cello has a distinct sound, and even within a particular instrument, there's harmonies. When you bring all of that together, you get a cacophony of sound that, when done correctly, creates resonance with us as an audience listening to it. That's the definition of resonance. And I look here today and I see innovators, I see technologists, I see educators, research institutes, policymakers, regulators, each one of us holding our own instrument, knowing that our instrument by in itself won't create resonance, but together we have the opportunity to create a symphony of sustainability. We didn't make it to the moon by aiming for the moon. We got to the moon by aiming for the stars. I believe we have the opportunity as a species to create sustainability for us on this planet. And for us to do that, I believe that it requires us to take that next step, to hit the moon so that we can reach the stars right here in the energy market. So, are you with me? Thank you very much.